the AI6 podcast with Joanne Sweeney.
Dr. Susan Leavy, thank you so much for joining me on the AI6 podcast.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
So first of all, introduce yourself to our listeners.
Hi, everyone. I'm Susan Leavy, a lecturer at the School of Information and Communication in University College Dublin and researcher with Insight Centre for Data Analytics. I'm Ireland's nominee on the Global Partnership for AI and one of three, and on the newly formed AI Advisory Council.
It's a wonderful position to have, and to have that nomination, only one of three, is quite significant. But also it's quite significant that the government have taken the proactive step to set up this council. But tell us about your own experience, first of all, in the area of AI.
Well, it began in 1999, believe it or not. It was the last century. I studied AI in Edinburgh University, kind of inspired by an amazing professor I had for philosophy, Maria Bergremian at UCD. And that was a fantastic time to study AI, but it was not something in the real world. It was like this experimental arm of philosophy. So I worked for several years in different countries in the banking sector, in investment banking, the technology side, and then went back, undertook a PhD in Trinity in AI and gender studies as well. Yeah, and now I'm a lecturer in UCD. And I teach AI to people without the programming. So people from social science background, literature, so humanities and social science students who want to know about AI, but not necessarily be AI developers.
And being an early adopter of AI in terms of learning about it and then practicing it in various sectors. But the evolution of it in recent years has accelerated so much. Talk to us a little bit about that and why we all suddenly feel that we're living through the age of AI all of a sudden.
It's kind of mind-blowing what's happened recently. Like, part of the course that I teach is there's a history of AI, and that was perfectly kind of fine and, not linear, but it had to be totally rewritten in the last 2 years. And there's now kind of a history of AI before ChatGPT and after. And like language models like that technology has been around for a while, but it did something that really shocked us. And I suppose it was developed and rolled out and accessible for people on a broad scale to use themselves. And that ability to produce language in a way that a human might and look so believable that there's something else going on, that really was quite a dramatic shock. But I think we're at the post kind of shock era, where we're looking now to where can it be useful rather than being afraid of it.
So we all read the headlines that AI will steal our jobs, but it will also keep the jobs of those that are proficient in AI. What's your own view about AI's impact on the future of work?
It will have a huge effect, but I think our nature is to get up in the morning and do work. I think no matter what we get AI to do, we'll find something else to do. That's what we do. That we'll find other ways. I don't think we'll have this unemployed workforce where AI is doing all the work for us. I don't think that will happen. I think AI can improve efficiency, make us better at doing things we already do. I don't think we're going to really start letting AI make huge decisions without oversight. I think we're ahead of that now that we have the AI Act and different things. If I was to be concerned, perhaps it would be in terms of the workforce, it is related to skills, perhaps, like we graduate from college and we're paid to be terrible graphic designers or terrible writers, or, we have to get paid to do a junior level job and then gain the skills. So at the moment, AI can be really useful if you're a master level, but if we start writing less, if we start creating less, and overall, what does that do to a workforce?
Well, you talked about oversight, and again, our own government here in Ireland, careful about that and thinking about it. Tell us about the council that they've put together that you're a member of.
It's a council of a broad spectrum of people. We have industry, academia as well, AI experts, along with digital policy experts. And our role is to provide independent advice to governments on issues of AI. So if you're in government and you're thinking about employing this AI technology, bringing it in or using it or trying to think about potential impacts of it, this council is there to support that and facilitate that thinking and provide reports and advice on key pressing issues. And there is, I think, there's about 15 on the council.
And then at a more European level, we have the new EU AI Act. And again, in my own impression was that that came very fast to the legislative table and being passed at a parliament at an EU level, and now with nation states having to implement it more locally. What can you tell us about what is contained in that and what role governments will have in terms of legislating for AI?
It's brilliant that it got over the line. Like before Christmas, there was the trilogue negotiations, which is the last phase of agreeing on the exact text. And it was the longest trilogues in the history of Europe, apparently. And I can see why, because it was the language models came out and the AI Act was written really before that technology was out in the world in the way it is. So there was kind of last minute changes to update it to include some of the large foundation model regulation. So it got over the line. It was amazing. Is it perfect? Would you improve it? Of course. You know, these things take so long to craft. If you were to start from scratch right now, maybe you'd do a different approach, or maybe you wouldn't like it, but it's there. And once we have regulation in place, then it's a framework to be able to modify it and improve it as we see it being rolled out. It takes a risk approach. So there's prohibitives, just we think that this really conflicts with fundamental values of human rights in the EU. Then we say we're prohibiting that. We're not allowing AI do these things. But then there's high risk in areas that you'd imagine, healthcare, policing, you know, those high risk areas. There's a lot of checks and balances, and then there's lower risk. So really, the AI Act will only affect those high risk areas. So largely, it won't affect most people, to be honest. And you would hope people if they're using AI in banking, in key areas that affects people's lives, like access to credit, access to education, access to jobs, you would hope that they're having these checks and balances in place already, and they now just need to report on them. But how it's going to be actually implemented is being worked through right now.
So you teach in AI and ethics. And ethics is a big part of this technology, and its potential is still largely unknown. What do we, in terms of, businesses or individuals or indeed public sector staff and governments, need to think about around ethics when it comes to AI use?
I think the most important investment is in education, perhaps, because once you know these systems and you know how they work, it's not magic and it's not rocket science, and people are disempowered or reticent or afraid of using them because maybe they'll do a better job than them or take over their jobs or make really bad mistakes and really undermine trust in government systems, especially in government, in public services. We have to be really, really careful. But if you understand these systems, know them, you don't have to be a developer. You just have to know how they work. Then you're empowered and you can use them as a tool. And also, you know the areas where it could make mistakes. So you know what to look for. Like any technology or tool that we use, we know what to look for and what are the pitfalls. And then we can benefit from all the efficiencies it can bring without the risks. I mean, there's so many tools out there, but just education and knowing how these systems are trained is hugely empowering, and it mitigates risk.
Do you use AI during the course of your own working day?
In the course of my day, I do. Every app on our phones these days is AI in them somehow. And if we look at the news, unless we're looking straight at a news website, it's curated and stuff's recommended to us and everything. So I use it every day on platforms on my phone, whatever it might be. I don't use it too much in my working day because I would never use a language model, for example, to write a paper or an email. So I don't use ChatGPT or the likes that way. But I use AI and test AI every day, I guess, and developing frameworks to develop them ethically.
So what do you see the future of AI being? What's your own impression kind of studying in that field?
Gosh, my own impression is whatever I say is probably going to be wrong because it's just growing and changing at such a pace. I think Europe has a good stance. I think we have the balance between encouraging and innovation and creating a safe space for innovation while making sure it's a safe space and people's fundamental rights are protected. I think we could be proud of being in that spot. So I'm very happy. I think it's a really exciting time to be in AI. And I think it's incumbent, especially in the public sector, I suppose, to make sure people are educated because there are pitfalls. But also when people don't know how technology works, they may be more reticent to use it.
Well, listen, you are at the forefront of this innovation in terms of government policy and advisory. So thank you for your work. And Dr. Susan Leavy, thank you for joining me on the AI6 podcast.
Thank you.
The AI6 podcast with Joanne Sweeney.